Awesome. So first of all, we are so grateful to be up here today. What started as a group project in the communication department under Dr. Bostorff, and with the topic inspired by Professor Kammer, has caught like wildfire and grown so quickly. So we would like to thank those two phenomenal human beings and also the 6 other people in the project without whom this would be entirely impossible and not as successful. So, first to understand the living wage, we have to understand what the minimum wage is. The minimum wage is the federally mandated minimum amount you can pay someone for labor. Currently, as established this January, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. In Ohio, it's 70 cents over, which is quite positive. If every state decides to pay more or less than the federal minimum wage, depending on how they interpret the law, such as whether the labor is tipped or not, etc. So, as I said earlier, 70 cents is great, except not that great. Going into a little bit of history to understand why the minimum wage does not make sense as a living wage. It was first mandated by FDR under the Fair Labor Standards Act at 25 cents per hour. This wasn't so great either, so not too long after, President Kennedy established it at $1.60 per hour. At the time, that was something that you could live off of pretty easily. However, as time goes on, so does the value of the dollar. So what if the US had followed inflation the way that we should have? What would the minimum wage be today? If we had followed the minimum wage inflation, it would be $10.69 per hour today. This is still below living wage, and our current minimum wage is $3 below that. Thus said, this country has in fact gone backwards.
So, a living wage is a wage that allows coverage of basic living expenses with no outside support while maintaining a healthy lifestyle free from sleep deprivation and overwork, while also being an active member of society. Now, this is different from the minimum wage in that it takes into consideration what it means to be a part of and live in our society rather than exist. Now, this makes it vary from place to place. For instance, it's different in Wayne County versus New York, or Miami, all over the place. However, there are a number of factors that are typically used to be in calculating it for a certain area. This includes food, childcare, transportation, housing, and medical expenses, and more depending on the location. Now, all of this added together adds up to $17.14 for Wayne County, Ohio, for either a single parent or a family of 4. Now, for a family of 4, that's both 2 parents and 2 children, where each parent makes $17.14.
So, Will and I are not up here to lecture you solely about the what, but also the who, the when, the where, and the why of it. Why should we care? There are 3 aspects that we're talking about today. The morality of it all, why we should help our fellow man, the economic impact and how it affects us, and the push we need for it, and the push we need today. So here comes the fun part. We're going to ask you to step into someone's shoes. We are here in Wayne County, Ohio. And in Wayne County, it follows the Ohio standard of $7.95 per hour, as we mentioned earlier. So the person we're going to follow today is someone working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, every week of the year, off of the Ohio standard minimum wage. The national poverty line is $11,670 per year. After taxes in Ohio, it adds up to roughly $15,500 per year. Yes, this is above the national standard. However, let's take into account things that happen in a year. Let's say you live in a 1-bedroom apartment, you do laundry every couple weeks, you have medical expenses, both expected and unexpected. You have to pay for your phone, electricity, maybe you get some job training, and Ohio winters get cold. So, how does this fare? Not too well. Mind you, I also made the internet and phone dial-up, and I found as low a wage as possible I could in the county, ending up with $911 is not a standard of living that someone who makes a living wage today can live off of, especially if they're at the time in their lives when they're trying to save up for retirement or start a family. That said, let's continue on to who holds minimum wage jobs today. Minimum wage jobs used to be part-time jobs that were considered routine summer jobs, such as custodial work, bussing tables, etc., whatever you can think of what you did in your summers. Now, those wages are mostly held between 21 and 54-year-olds and have turned from part-time into full-time jobs. This is a time in your life when you might be starting a family, you are paying for your own living expenses, you are saving up for retirement, you might historically have been bettering in a career and making more and more money. However, that is not what's happening today. So, once again, let's step into a different person. You are a single parent with 2 kids, late 20s, early 30s, and you are making the federal minimum wage of $7.25 per hour. How much do you have to work to reach the bare minimum of what you can do to support yourself and your 2 children? You are working 125 hours per week, which leaves you roughly 6 hours at home to spend with your kids, to get a little bit of sleep, maybe, who knows? And that's adding in childcare. This is not a standard of living that we should be okay with.
So, the impacts of the living wage are quite a lot. Now, this information is on raising the minimum wage. This was taken from a recent study the Congressional Budget Office did on raising the minimum wage to either $10.10 an hour or $9 an hour, in which it estimates that 16.5 million workers would end up having higher overall earnings. Now, the impact of this is that there would be an overall increase in in real income by $2 billion. 900,000 people would be raised out of poverty of the 45 million that currently occupy it. And families with income between $20,000 and $50,000 would end up having an increase in additional income by $12 billion. That is a very significant impact. Now, unfortunately, there are some concerns. 500,000 people would face unemployment as a result of the wage increase, which is a 0.3% reduction in overall employment. There would be a slight increase in the national deficit, and the prices of goods and services would increase. However, the increase in prices are taken into the CBO's consideration when they calculate the real income benefits in the long term. So, there ends up being ineffectual or not. Doesn't really matter in the long run. Yeah. Now, all of that was for the $10.10 an hour option, which have a significantly larger impact than the $9 option. And that is only by raising the minimum wage a couple dollars. Imagine if they undertook a living wage. The impacts, the positive benefits would be much more significant. Now, a number of places are already taking on the living wage. New York City, Washington State, a number of universities, including Harvard and Miami of Ohio, I think closer to home, have all become living wage communities, and more places are moving towards becoming living wage communities. So, overall, if we look at the benefits of increasing real income for the majority of people, while simultaneously bringing thousands of people out of poverty, then moving to a living wage really should not be ignored, and that is why we should move to become living wage communities. Thank you.